that voice again, huh? That crazy voice. Who is that guy? I don't know. But yes, welcome to KSN episode 88. And just want to say sorry for not doing an episode this week. It's already a Friday. That's right. I got some explaining to do, okay? I'm sure you guys are wondering where have I been? So I was going to come back on Tuesday like I usually do, but I was really tired. Okay, so come back on Wednesday. Wednesday, I didn't really have the time. Thursday, I actually did an episode, but I never released it. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad I didn't release it because I was tired. I was both tired and running out of time. So, yeah. So here we are on Friday. Now, yes, I am back in my bedroom doing this episode. The last time I did an episode from my bedroom was like over 4 months ago. I'm looking at it. Episode 51. Wow. That is 37 episodes ago. That's kind of crazy. So I'm back in my bedroom, not permanently, but this is where I've been this week using my laptop from. And I used to do episodes in this room, but I eventually stopped making episodes from this room because I noticed that it's not really bright in this room. Like, my face is kind of dark, all right? And even though it's just a video of me talking to the webcam, you don't actually have to watch the video, but sometimes I'll say, look at this, look what I'm showing you, but yeah, even I would turn up my brightness on my laptop and it's still kind of dark. So I'm actually recording this on a Friday morning, the same day that I'll release this. So I'm recording this right before I leave the house. This is probably a better idea. Because if I were to record it late last night before I go to bed, I might fall asleep. And that's kind of what I did. And this is take 2. First time ever, a take 2 in this podcast. I was dozing off. So I figured, let's do a better version. Doing this in the morning before I leave the house. I leave in about 50 minutes, so I have quite some time to talk. But anyways, the main thing I want to talk about is this past weekend, CFL playoffs, and obviously the Fall Classic, the World Series, has ended. And let's start. Let's begin with the World Series. I've already recapped some of the World Series, so I'll recap. Games 6 and 7. All right. Especially Game 7. All right. So my apologies for talking about this late. But another reason why I'm doing this late is because I wanted to hear all of my favorite sports talk podcasts on their thoughts of the World Series. I wanted to hear their thoughts first, and I heard a lot of people. I heard a lot of guys talking about it, as they should, you know. So I'll talk about that later, and also I'm also going to talk about my favorite sports talk podcasts in terms of them talking about different sports leagues, not just one. Okay, I'm gonna tell you from Monday if they talked about the World Series first or the NFL first. All right, so I'll save that for later. So Game 6 last Friday night, which was almost about a week ago already. It's kind of crazy. So the after that heartbreaking 18 inning loss, Game 3 for the Blue Jays, they took games 4 and 5 in Los Angeles. So I'm like, wow, they have to win this. Up 3 games to 2, heading back to Toronto for Game 6. Now, Game 6 came, and my original prediction was having the LA Dodgers winning in 5 games, because I thought they would win this pretty easily. I thought they were a heavy favorite. I'm sure a lot of people thought they were as well. But man, how about those Blue Jays fighting? They had home field advantage, only because they have one more win. They had one more win than the Dodgers in the regular season. See, back in the old days, they alternate home field advantage, which I find that really strange. But back then I wasn't watching. Most of these years occurred before I was born. Now, when I started watching the World Series, it was different. Home field advantage determined, or excuse me, the All-Star game determined the World Series. So for many years in the 2010s, the American League won the All-Star game, which means that American League team got home field advantage. I find that really strange as well. But the one good thing about that is that's what makes the All-Star game actually mean something. But at the same time, I did not like that. I didn't like how the All-Star game determined home field advantage in the World Series. It should always be the team with the better record. But I will say this, that All-Star game format on which league determined home field advantage, a lot of times during that era, most of the World Series, the team with the better record had home field advantage anyways. There were a few years where it wasn't like that. 2016, I believe, was the last year where the All-Star game determined home field advantage. And that was the year the Chicago Cubs had over 100 wins, but they didn't get home field advantage. Instead, it was the Cleveland Indians, because the American League won the 2016 All-Star game. And, that was the best World Series I've ever watched. Chicago Cubs finally won the World Series, Game 7. But man, it's like you wish Game 7 was in Wrigley Field, because the Cubs had the better win-loss record. But yeah. anyways, back to what I was saying. Game 6, Blue Jays up 3-2. And I had a feeling, excuse me. I had a feeling that the Dodgers would win Game 6 only because they had Yamamoto pitching. He dominated Game 2, came back for Game 6, and I was not surprised that the LA Dodgers won Game 6. He's an amazing pitcher. So, Dodgers were up 3-0 in the third inning, and then the Blue Jays got a run in the third inning, 3-1. That was the final score. Isn't that weird? All the runs were scored in the same inning from both teams, 3-1. That was the final score. And the weird thing about this game was, excuse me, oh my gosh, why am I moving my camera, my webcam? All right, oh geez, sorry about that. The weird thing about this Game 6 was the Blue Jays had more hits than the Dodgers. Blue Jays had 8 hits, and the Dodgers had 4 hits. Yeah, it was kind of weird. So, again, I was not surprised.
Well.
Oops, excuse me. Sorry about that. I was not surprised that the Dodgers took Game 6. But this Game 6 was really good. And that ending was something. Yeah. That ending was kind of crazy. Double play. And bottom of the ninth inning, Blue Jays had 2 men on base. Yeah. Looked like the Blue Jays were going to attempt to tie this game here. And what's his name? Was it Kike Hernandez that made that catch? I mean, he was running so fast. Made the second out, throws at the second base for a double play to end Game 6. Throws it right to Rojas. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, I did a live stream of me watching the final couple of innings of Game 6. The reason why I couldn't do the whole game was because it was on Halloween night. And some people were, ringing the doorbell. I dressed up as a baseball umpire, and I actually gave away some of my squishy baseballs. Yes. But I was listening in the background. But again, I knew the Dodgers would win Game 6. Now we get to Game 7. Oh my goodness gracious. Too much happened in Game 7. It's hard to remember everything that happened in Game 7. It was a wild Game 7 for sure. So I said to myself, okay, Game 7, the 2 best words in sports, anything can happen, but the Blue Jays have to win this. They have to win this in front of their fans. Because, it's at the Sky Dome, Rogers Center. It's so much louder when the roof is closed, so yeah. I'm very lucky to have Sportsnet, which is the Canadian version their Canadian broadcast for the Blue Jays. Yeah, that whole World Series, I was listening in to Dan Shulman and Buck Martinez because I like those guys. It's like, obviously, I was rooting for the Blue Jays, so that's another reason why I chose that broadcast. I find that broadcast so much better than Fox, in my opinion. So it was nice to listen to a different broadcast for a change. So even though I live nowhere near Canada, just same thing. I have the TSN channels, the Canadian version of ESPN. That's my favorite sports channel. I'm on that channel like on a weekly basis watching the late night sports center because I find that a lot more entertaining than the American Sports Center. This is how I became a big fan of the CFL, all because I have those channels. So, yeah. And it's like, when you hear Dan Shulman's voice, it just makes this event bigger than ever. And he has a son named Ben Shulman, and he's also an announcer. He is the radio play-by-play for the Blue Jays. And when I first heard Ben Shulman's voice, I said to myself, oh my gosh, Dan Shulman has gone crazy. Because I thought that was Dan Shulman's voice. Turns out that wasn't. I wasn't sure, wait, is this really Dan Shulman? Because this sounds like the radio broadcast. Yeah, it was the radio broadcast, but that is Dan Shulman's son, Ben Shulman. And here's how I found out, and I didn't know. I didn't know Dan Shulman has a son. Oh, that's also an announcer. Here's how I found that out. One of the recent podcasts that I added to my list, it's called "Is This a Great Game or What?" with Tim Kurchin and his son Jeff Kurchin, and they both sound similar. Just like Dan Shulman and Ben Shulman, they also both sound similar. So the Kurchins had the Shulmans on as special guests. So that's how I found out. That's how I found out that Dan Shulman has a son named Ben Shulman. They sound alike. So after I found that out, I have Sirius XM. So just so I don't forget, I added the Toronto Blue Jays radio broadcast to my favorites. Just so I can remember, oh, this is Dan Shulman's son. So, yeah, they're both great. All right, so now to the game 7. Last time we had a game 7 was back in 2019, 6 years ago already. That was a weird World Series for me, and I'm sure you guys know why. All right, so anything can happen in Game 7. Saturday night, I heard that this got huge ratings, which is great for the league, even though they were competing against college football. The only big college football game that happened at the same time as Game 7 was that SEC game on ABC, which was Oklahoma at Tennessee. That is a pretty big game. I would have watched that. I probably would have watched that if Game 7 wasn't a thing. But I didn't. Gotta watch Game 7. It's so important. Now, I missed the first, I missed about the first 30 minutes of the game because of, I was watching, after the second CFL game ended, playoff game, Sports Center with TSN came on, which was basically like their post-game show of the playoffs. I wanted to listen to that first, and then I would tune in to Game 7. So that's what I did. And I got something to eat, a KFC chicken sandwich. And that's why I started the stream kind of late. Yes, I did a Game 7 watch along, but it wasn't the entire Game 7, but it was mainly the second half of Game 7. So, this crowd was loud, electric. So I said once again, okay, Blue Jays, I have to win this thing because they deserve it. Took 2 out of 3 in LA after losing that heartbreaking 18-inning, 6.5-hour Game 3. They got to win Game 7. I'm sure, I bet maybe not every, but I bet a lot of non-Dodger fans were rooting for the Blue Jays, including myself. So, bottom of the third inning. First of all, you know what's kind of cool? The home plate umpire. His name is Jordan Baker. He's the biggest umpire in the league. He's 6'7". Yeah. Behind home plate. Game 7, the biggest umpire. Now that's kind of cool. I find that pretty cool. So, I don't know if any of you guys remember former umpire Tim McClelland. At the time he was the biggest umpire in the league. He was in a lot of big playoff games, so I assume Mr. Baker will be in some as well. And he did great. People were, a lot of people like to criticize the officials, but Mr. Baker, he did really well in Game 7. Biggest umpire in the league. And you know what's kind of funny is that the crew chief, Mark Wegner, is the smallest umpire. He's like a foot shorter than Baker. So, yeah. All right, let's get to the game here. Bottom of the third inning. George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on bases. And who came up? Bo Bichette. The player that missed a couple of weeks due to injury came back for the World Series. And he hits a 3-run home run to center field. Skydome went crazy. I think it was shaking. The camera was kind of shaking. It's crazy, man. So, it's another wild Blue Jay playoff moment. Bo freaking Bichette. Bo is the shit. You get it? So, just like that, 3-0 Blue Jays, and I'm like, all right, this is their game. After that, this is their game. Yeah, I know it's only the third inning, but this is their game. Okay, so top of the fourth, Dodgers got a run, make it 3-1, and then I believe this happened in the bottom of the fourth inning. The bench is cleared. Yeah. The bench is cleared? That's crazy. The bench is actually cleared. Game 7 of a World Series. When's the last time that happened? When's the last time something like that happened? Oh, I forgot to mention the starting pitchers for the LA Dodgers. It was Shohei Ohtani. And for the Blue Jays, it was Mad Max Scherzer. Now that's That's crazy, right? Two big time names, Game 7. There's nothing like it. And yeah, Bo Bichette hit that 3-run shot off of Otani. What a moment. Now, bottom of the fourth. The bench is actually cleared. Yeah, isn't that crazy? I don't know if that's ever happened before in a World Series game. But that was pretty nuts. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me in the 2019 World Series. I forget if it was Game 6 or 7, but it was in Houston. The Washington Nationals manager at the time, Dave Martinez, got ejected. Yeah, an ejection in the World Series. I said to myself, when's the last time something like that happened? And then this. Benches cleared? That was. Oh, man. How about that? But there was no fighting. No one got thrown out. The benches were warned. Both sides. And Buck Martinez didn't like that because basically when both benches are warned, and if someone gets hit by the pitch again on purpose, yeah, you're going to be thrown out of the game. And luckily, that did not happen in Game 7. Game 7, it's all or nothing, you know? This is it, the final game of the World Series, of the season. November the 1st, that's right. We had a baseball game in the month of November. There's nothing like it. Okay? So, top of the 6th inning, the Dodgers scored, make it 3-2. In the bottom of the 6th, the Blue Jays scored, make it 4-2. So I'm like, all right. This is, I was watching, right? Did that live stream of me watching, dressed up as the baseball umpire. I was like, oh yeah, I'm at the game. No, I'm at the replay center, whatever you call that. Well, that's what the CFL calls. Used to call it the command center, but you know what I mean. So then, the top of the 8th inning, Max Muncy hit a moonshot to make the score 4-3. Yeah. And I'm like, uh-oh. LA Dodgers coming back. Why am I not surprised? So, Blue Jays are up 4-3. And this is where both teams used a lot of their pitchers. Yeah, the Blue Jays, they brought back in Trey Savage. Dodgers, they brought back in Tyler Glasnow, I believe. He's like the tallest pitcher. I'm trying to remember. I'm skimming through this video, the highlight video. It's hard to remember everything, especially when you don't take notes. I forgot to take notes, but that's fine. And this is the one cool thing about Game 7 is that their bullpen, both teams' bullpen is basically their starting pitchers. How cool is that, right? So, brought back in Trey Savage. He was a savage in what, Game 5, I believe it was. And Max Muncy hit a home run. A moonshot. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Here we go. LA coming back, huh? So Blue Jays are up 4-3. And they brought in Blake Snell. Remember Blake Snell? He didn't pitch very well in games 1 and game 5, I think. Yeah, he didn't do so well. He didn't do very well, but he did that time in game 7. All right, top of the ninth. Last chance for the LA Dodgers, right? Fans are on their feet. Blue Jay fans are ready to celebrate. But no. No. Rojas, the second baseman. Remember? The player that made sure the Dodgers won game 6 hits a home run. Another home run to tie this game. And I'm just like, I think I said to myself, remember that live stream? I said, watch the LA Dodgers tie this game in the 9th inning. And a few minutes later, they did. And I'm like, get the F out of here. If you don't believe me, go to that live stream. I put the timestamps of me saying that. Please, if you don't believe me, go look at those timestamps I put in the comments. Yeah, it was in the comments. So, game's tied, 4-4. Ay, ay, ay. And the Blue Jay fans were absolutely stunned. They were absolutely stunned. So maybe in the bottom of the 9th inning, the Blue Jays can get something going. You know, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he is amazing. He is amazing when he is on fire. The MVP of the American League Championship Series. And Bo Bichette, a great hitter. He just can't, he can't run as well. He can't run as well due to, him being out for a couple of weeks. So they took out Blake Snell after they got 2 men on base. And Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, decided, let's bring back Yamamoto. Even though what did he throw, like 96 pitches in game 6? He comes back the next night in game 7. I was going to say, okay, how much you have left in the tank? All right, so Alejandro Kirk came up to bat and he got hit by the pitch. So the bases were loaded with 1 out. And I'm like, okay, this is it. Blue Jays are going to win this thing. I really thought they would. Now, when the bases are loaded, you have to move. You got to go to the next base. So when you're on third base, you got to go to home plate. And that's exactly what happened. But a very, very close play at home plate. I thought the runner was safe. But no, Mr. Jordan Baker, the biggest umpire, called him out. And they challenged this. The Blue Jays challenged this play. It looked like the Dodgers catcher's foot came off home plate for a second, but it came back down in just the nick of time. Dan Shulman was like, are the Blue Jays going to win the World Series on an overturned call? Like, that's never happened before. Can you imagine if that were to happen? Oh, man. It looked like the runner was safe for a second, but, this is the one cool thing about replay. You get to see these different angles and slow motion. How close can you get? Man, Blue Jays almost won that World Series. So 2 outs. Bases loaded. And what's his name? Hernandez and this other player, what's his name? Number 44. Oh, they collided and they somehow secured the third out to end the bottom of the ninth inning. And that means we're going to extra innings. That's crazy. So, oh my gosh, the Blue Jays were so close. So here we go. Extra innings. The best part, no ghost runner rule in the playoffs, thankfully. Like, what if this game went 18 innings as well? That'd be kind of crazy. So, yeah. More baseball. Game 7. Extra innings. There is nothing like it. Freddie Freeman came up first, and he almost hit a home run. The player who hit the game-winning walk-off homer in that 18-inning marathon. Dodgers got 2 men on base. They actually loaded the bases in the top of the 10th, and I'm like, uh-oh, they're gonna score a run. But no, that did not happen. Man. Bottom of the 10th inning. See if the Blue Jays can get something going again. Game ended after midnight. No, Yamamoto was on fire. He has stepped up his game, even though he pitched, 96 pitches? Game 6, the night before. And then the 11th. Top of the 11th. Smith on the Dodgers hits a home run to take the lead for the first time. And I'm like, why are there so many home runs in this World Series? This is like the most home runs I've ever seen in a World Series. Now, you might find that entertaining, but I bet a lot of the old school fans, they're like, what the heck? So many home runs, And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then the bottom of the 11th inning, it looked like the Blue Jays got something going. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got a base hit. Went to third base. 2 men on base. Yamamoto still pitching. He had over 30 pitches. So he pitched like over 120 pitches in 2 nights. That's nuts. So Alejandro Kirk stepped up. 1 out. Man on first. Man on third. If he gets a base hit, Blue Jays tie this game. If he hits a home run, Blue Jays win this series. But no, the one thing that I was hoping not to see happened. A double play. A double play to end the World Series. Mookie Betts, he is so fast. And just that is how the LA Dodgers won the World Series back to back. And I had no words after that. The one thing I didn't want to happen was the LA Dodgers winning the World Series in Toronto. And it happened. Oh my gosh. Not only this was a crazy Game 7, this was a crazy World Series as a whole, meaning it was really entertaining. I think this is probably the best World Series I've ever watched. I think it is. Unbelievable. But man, why couldn't the Dodgers win this in Dodger Stadium? Last year, they won it at Yankee Stadium. Now this year they win it in Toronto. Oh my gosh. And the weird thing was that they lost the World Series back to back years in 2017 and 2018 in Dodger Stadium. And now winning it back to back years on the road. Why is it so many times the visiting team wins the championship? Ay, ay, ay. Heartbreaking loss for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, my questions are, how do Yankee fans feel about this? Or a better question, how do Mariners fans feel? Because the Mariners, they suffered a heartbreaking loss in the American League Championship Series Game 7. Now, the Blue Jays have to suffer a much bigger heartbreaking loss. Unbelievable. You know what this means when a championship goes to 7 games? That means those are the two best teams. These were the two best teams in the league. But man, I really wished the Blue Jays won because that would have been epic. Seeing their fans go absolutely bananas. So, got to give credit to the LA Dodgers for winning the World Series. Craziness. Back to back. And you know what? Japan. Next year will be the World Baseball Classic in March. Japan might win the World Baseball Classic again. The MVP, Yamamoto. He deserves it. He really deserves it. So this really was an entertaining World Series. And I gotta say, this is the best. Not only this is probably the best World Series I've ever seen, but this is definitely the best championship, uh, the best championship sports moment of 2025. It's not even close. Remember, it was at the end of last year I talked about what are my favorite championships games per year. 2025, it's the World Series. It definitely is. Game 7, I heard that had a much better rating than the NBA Finals Game 7. And that really means something too. So, my favorite sports talk podcasts. So, I listen to the Tony Kornheiser Show, Mike Francesa, okay, Dan Patrick, Adam Shine. This is on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Katie Nolan, Stephen A. Smith, Mad Dog Russo, okay, Rich Eisen, Michael K. These are the sports shows where they don't just talk about the same sports league all the time. Then you got the ones that'll only talk about a certain sport. Okay, so for baseball Tonight with Buster Olney. What's the name? The name of the show is called The Leadoff Spot on Sirius XM with Steve Phillips and Xavier Scruggs. And of course, I mentioned earlier, Is This a Great Game or What? With Tim Kirchin and his son Jeff Kirchin. So, I listened to all those shows of them talking about this World Series Game 7 because it was that damn epic. It really was. It was really epic. So, so some of them they talked about the World Series first, but some of them actually talked about the NFL first, which was kind of unfortunate. I mean, I get it. Monday, you usually recap NFL Sunday, but the World Series, this is Game 7. You got to talk about that first. Plus, it happened before NFL Sunday. So, let's see here. Dan Patrick Show. They talked about the World Series first. Um, Rich Eisen Show. He talked about the NFL first. That just shows you that Rich Eisen is an NFL junkie. I mean, he's always been an NFL guy, anyways. Shine on Sports with Adam Shine. He talked about the NFL first, but he didn't go to commercial. He didn't go to commercial. So right after he was done talking about this certain NFL game, which was the Buffalo Bills beating the Kansas City Chiefs, he went to Game 7 of the World Series. Fan service with Katie Nolan. She talked about the World Series first. Stephen A. Smith. So his show on Monday, he was actually doing it from Arlington because the Dallas Cowboys were playing on Monday Night Football. So he had some special guests, Jerry Jones, Michael Irving, and some other guy. And he did his show in front of an audience. So no one called in. No, he couldn't take any phone calls. But he did talk a little bit about the World Series, but not much because he was doing his show from Arlington and he had his 3 special guests on. So I guess he's excused. Mad Dog Unleashed with Christopher Russo. He talked about the World Series first because I think baseball is his number one favorite sport anyways. He used to have a show on MLB Network called High Heat. But yeah, he mostly talked about the World Series. He didn't talk much about the NFL until like the last 40 minutes of his show. His show is 3 hours, but without commercials, it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes. All right. I believe those are all the shows that I've listened to in terms of them talking about multiple sports leagues instead of just one. Then, of course, I listened to the ones that talked about a certain sport. Baseball Tonight with Buster Olney. I've always liked his podcast. The leadoff spot with Steve Phillips and Xavier Scruggs. Yeah, they're great. Eduardo Perez is also on that show, but he's been missing out because he was also one of the announcers on ESPN Radio, so he needed some rest. And of course, is this a great game with what? With the Kirchens. And Tim Kirchen, he's covered Major League Baseball for like over 40 years, I think. And he said that this is the greatest World Series he's ever watched or covered. Now that means something. Because that guy, he knows a lot about the history. Yeah. I'll have to ask my father if this is the greatest World Series he's ever seen. I forgot to ask him that, but I think he'll say it's one of them for sure. Because he's watched the World Series a bunch of years. He's old enough. He's seen every Super Bowl live. Yeah, next year will be Super Bowl 60. He's watched all of them live. That's something. Some people, they probably watched every WrestleMania live. So, yeah. Overall, this was a entertaining World Series. I didn't thought it would be this good. I didn't thought it would go 6 or 7 games. I'm sure a lot of you guys didn't as well. But man, ugh, what a heartbreaking loss for the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, I said after the Mariners lost the ALCS, I said I don't think they're going to make it to next year's ALCS. Now, I'm going to say the same thing with the Blue Jays. I don't think they're going to make the World Series next year. Now, the LA Dodgers, I think they will make the NLCS again next year, and I think they will make the World Series again next year. That's how damn good this team is, even though they were kind of slumping in the regular season. But postseason time, oh my gosh. I know, I get it. A lot of people don't like this team now because they have all the money. I get it. But ah, it's crazy. It's hard to put into words. It was an entertaining World Series. So, yeah. And yeah, postseason was entertaining. I've always looked forward to the postseason. All right. So, oh, and the one thing I found weird was um, Joe Davis. His final call of that World Series was to beat the champ. You got to knock them out. Well, the Dodgers, they were the defending champions, right? I guess he meant the American League champions, Toronto Blue Jays. You know that if the Blue Jays were to win that World Series, and that would have been a great call because oh my gosh, Blue Jays knocked off the defending champions. To beat the champs, you got to knock them out. Oh my gosh. Well, the defending champions were not knocked out, so I find that call kind of weird. I'm just not really a fan of Joe Davis, but there's another announcer. His name is Steven Nelson. He's the radio play-by-play for the LA Dodgers. He kind of sounds like Joe Davis 2.0. He kind of has a weird voice. But what happened to Charlie Steiner? I know he's an old guy, but I was hoping to hear him. I don't know if he's officially retired. I heard he had like cancer or something, so I don't know if he's okay or not. But there's another radio play-by-play announcer called his name is Tim Neverett, I think. Is he no longer a Dodgers radio broadcaster? Because I like him. I remember he used to call the Pittsburgh Pirates games over 10 years ago. But anyways, great World Series, like I said. Just a heartbreaking loss for the Blue Jays. All right, guys, I got to get going in a couple of minutes. Quick thoughts on the CFL playoff games. My favorite team against 5K or your favorite team. Kind of a weird playoff game because it's a team from the West Division against a team from the East Division. I sort of did a live stream of me watching that game. It didn't go very well. The stream ended on its own because of a low upload speed. But I was pretty confident that the Alouettes would win that game. I think they call that the crossover game. There's never been a crossover team that went to the Grey Cup. So it was an entertaining game. In fact, both CFL playoff games were entertaining. Um, it's a shame. The Blue Bombers were in 5 consecutive Grey Cups, and this year's Grey Cup is in Winnipeg, and they're not in it. Isn't that a shame? That kind of sucks for them. I bet there's people that are also happy about that because we get to see a different team from the West Division. So the Montreal Alouettes, they will move on to the East Final against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. In the other game, the BC Lions against the Calgary Stampeders was also a great game. Um, this is why I missed the beginning of the World Series because that game was still going on. And it looked like the Calgary Stampeders were going to tie this game, but no. it looked like the game was going to go to overtime. The game was in BC Place. I was sort of hoping, like, I like both teams, but, Montreal Alouettes wide receiver Tyson Philpott, he has a twin brother who also plays for the Stampeders. So it would have been cool if the Grey Cup was Stampeders, Alouettes, Philpott against his twin brother Philpott. That would have been kind of cool. But I do like the BC Lions quarterback, Nathan Rourke. The BC Lions, they won, what, like 6 games in a row? That's crazy. So, yeah, BC Lions will now take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So, this means, excuse me, I know this is a Friday episode. I normally preview the weekend, but I'm going to be a day behind. I will do a special Saturday edition of KSN, and I'll release it early. So if you folks wake up early and listen to my episode of me previewing the weekend, thank y'all very much. Sorry for doing this late, but I guess they say better late than ever. This is what I mainly wanted to talk about, the World Series. And I think it's better if I talk about the World Series as a separate episode and do another episode of me previewing this weekend, because I do have other things I want to say, but I'm running out of time, so I'd rather save that for a different episode. All right? So, that's about it. So now that the baseball season's over, I guess I'm going to be a football junkie until the Super Bowl for the next 3 months. But this is when the season gets pretty good anyways. I can't believe it. We're already in November. And the weather's still warm where I live. What the heck? It's kind of weird. But anyways, congratulations to the LA Dodgers winning a fantastic World Series. So, once again, I'll be back tomorrow, a special Saturday edition. I think I've only done one special Saturday edition of KSN, so see you guys again tomorrow. Looking forward to talk about this big weekend in football. See you soon. Thank you for listening to Keith Sports News.